Imagine for a moment that you're standing at the edge of a vast reservoir, perched high above a dry valley. The water behind that dam is enormous, billions of liters, held back by concrete and engineering. Now, someone asks you a simple question: how much power is in that reservoir? And you naturally point at the height of the water, the towering wall, the dizzying drop. That's the power, you say. Look at how high it sits. But you'd be wrong, not entirely wrong, but wrong in the way that almost everyone is wrong about electricity, because the height of the water isn't power, the height is potential. The power only appears when the water actually moves, when it falls, when it does something. A reservoir sitting perfectly still, no matter how tall, delivers zero power to the valley below. And this, in the simplest terms possible, is the secret that almost nobody understands about voltage. Voltage is not power. Voltage is the height of the water. And if Richard Feynman were sitting here right now, leaning back in his chair with that mischievous grin he always wore when he was about to dismantle a popular misconception, he would tell you that confusing voltage with power is one of the most common, most stubborn, and most fascinating mistakes in all of physics. Let's start with what you think you know. You've seen the warning labels: high voltage, danger of death, lightning bolts on yellow signs. You've heard people say a power line carries hundreds of thousands of volts, and you've probably assumed that the higher the voltage, the more dangerous, the more powerful, the more energetic. And in some loose, intuitive sense, that feels right. But here's the strange truth that Feynman loved to point out about nature. Our intuition is built for the world we can see and touch, and electricity does not live in that world. Electricity lives in a world of fields, charges, and invisible pressures, and the names we've given to its quantities, volts, amps, watts, ohms, are just labels we've slapped on shadows. The labels feel familiar. The shadows are not. So what is voltage really? Let's walk into it slowly. Imagine two metal plates, one with a surplus of electrons crowded onto it, jostling, repelling each other, desperate to escape, and the other plate empty, almost lonely, with plenty of room. Between these two plates exists a kind of invisible tension. The electrons want to leave the crowded plate and rush to the empty one. They can't because there's air or vacuum between them, but the desire is there, the pressure is there. That pressure, that electrical eagerness, is voltage. It is the difference in electrical potential between 2 points. It's the readiness, the willingness, the cocked and loaded quality of charge waiting to move. But notice something crucial. Nothing has happened yet. No energy has been delivered. No work has been done. The electrons are just sitting there, full of intent, full of promise, and entirely useless until something changes. This is exactly the situation Alessandro Volta found himself contemplating in the late 1700s, when he stacked discs of zinc and copper separated by brine-soaked cloth and built the first true battery. Volta had created a device that maintained a steady electrical pressure between its two ends. He could feel the tingle on his tongue, see the tiny sparks, and yet, in itself, his pile wasn't doing much of anything. The voltage existed whether or not anyone was using it. It was a reservoir, a potential, a promise. And it was only when Volta connected wires and let charges actually flow through something, a frog's leg, a lamp filament a century later, a human finger if you were unlucky, that the energy stored in that potential became real, measurable, useful power. Now here's where Feynman would lean forward and say something almost philosophical. He'd remind you that in physics you have to be brutally careful about the difference between something that exists and something that happens. Voltage exists. Power happens. Voltage is a state of being. Power is an event, a flow, an act of transfer. And the formula that ties them together, the one every electrical engineering student memorizes and most people forget, is deceptively simple. Power equals voltage multiplied by current. P equals V times I. 3 letters, one little equation, and inside it lives the entire mystery. Look at it carefully. If voltage is high but current is 0, power is 0. Multiply any number by 0, and you get 0. This is why a bird can sit on a 50,000-volt power line and feel absolutely nothing. The bird's tiny body is at the same potential as the wire. There's no current flowing through it, and so even though the voltage is screamingly high, no power is being delivered to that bird. It chirps, it preens, It flies away, blissfully unaware that humans are terrified of the very thing it's standing on. The bird understands, in its small feathered way, what most humans never grasp. Voltage alone cannot hurt you. Voltage alone cannot do anything. Conversely, if current flows but voltage is essentially zero, power is also zero. You can have huge numbers of electrons moving sluggishly through a thick copper bar with negligible resistance, and the power dissipated in that bar is almost nothing because there's no voltage drop across it. The electrons are moving, yes, but they're not falling. They're drifting horizontally across a flat surface, and a flat surface, no matter how busy, releases no energy. To make this concrete, let's return to our reservoir analogy, because it is, in my opinion, the single best mental model anyone has ever invented for electricity. Voltage is the height of the water. Current is the rate at which water flows. And power is what you actually get when height and flow combine. You can have a tiny trickle from an enormous height, like a thin stream falling off a cliff, and it might generate decent power. You can have a torrent rushing across a flat plain and it generates almost none. To get serious power, real, useful, work-doing power, you need both height and flow. You need voltage and current. Lose either one, and you have nothing. This is why those terrifying high-voltage lines you see crossing the countryside don't actually carry that much current. The voltage is jacked up to hundreds of thousands of volts, precisely so that the current can be small. And here's why that matters, and why it's one of the most beautiful tricks in all of engineering. When current flows through a wire, the wire heats up, and that heat is wasted energy. The amount of heat lost is proportional to the current squared, so if you double the current, you quadruple the losses. But if you double the voltage and halve the current, you transmit the same power with 1/4 of the losses. This insight, championed by Nikola Tesla and George Westinghouse in their famous war against Thomas Edison's direct current empire in the 1890s, is the reason your home has electricity at all. Edison wanted low-voltage DC power stations every few blocks. Tesla wanted high-voltage AC power humming across continents. Tesla won because Tesla understood, deep in his bones, that voltage isn't power, but voltage lets you move power efficiently. And yet, despite Tesla's triumph, the misconception persists. People still think high voltage is dangerous because it's powerful. It isn't. High voltage is dangerous because it can push current through things that shouldn't conduct, like your skin, your heart, the air itself. Voltage is the bully that breaks down the door. Current is what walks through afterward and does the damage. A static shock from a doorknob can hit you with 20,000 volts and leave you with nothing but a startled yelp, because the total charge involved is microscopic and the current lasts for microseconds. Meanwhile, a car battery sitting at a humble 12 volts can melt a wrench, burn a hole through your wedding ring, and start a fire, because it can deliver hundreds of amperes of current. 12 volts. The same as 4 AA batteries in series. And it can weld metal. Let that sink in. This is one of those moments where Feynman would pause and tell a story, because he loved to anchor abstract ideas in concrete experience. Picture a young Feynman, maybe 10 or 11 years old, in his makeshift laboratory in Far Rockaway, Queens, surrounded by old radios and bits of wire and a battery he'd salvaged from somewhere. He's curious about electricity. He's reading books that contradict each other, and he discovers, by trial and error, by burning his fingers and blowing fuses, that the world doesn't care what you call things. The world only cares about what flows, what pushes, and what resists. He doesn't need fancy words to feel the difference between a 9-volt battery on his tongue, mildly unpleasant, and a wall socket, which he wisely never tested. The voltage is different, but more importantly, what the source can deliver is different. One is a puddle, the other is the ocean. Now, to really understand this, we need to bring in one more character, one more variable in the cast, and that's resistance. Resistance is the world's reluctance to let current flow. It's the friction in the pipe, the narrowness of the channel, the gravel in the stream bed slowing the water down. And the relationship between voltage, current, and resistance was nailed down in 1827 by a quiet German physicist named Georg Ohm, who was so disrespected by his colleagues at the time that he was forced to resign his teaching post for daring to publish his findings. Ohm's law is, like Feynman's favorite equations, almost embarrassingly simple. Voltage equals current times resistance. V equals I times R. 3 letters again. Another doorway into the invisible world. What this means is that voltage doesn't determine current on its own. It determines current together with resistance. Apply 120 volts to a high resistance object, like dry wood, and almost no current flows. Apply 120 volts to a low resistance object, like a copper wire, and an enormous current flows, so much that the wire vaporizes in a flash of light. Same voltage. Wildly different outcomes, because voltage is just the push. The push only matters in relation to what it's pushing through, and here is the deeper insight, the one Feynman would savor like a fine wine. Power is the marriage of push and movement. P equals V times I. But because of Ohm's law, you can rewrite that equation in 2 other ways. Power equals current squared times resistance. Power equals voltage squared divided by resistance. 3 different masks on the same face. They're all telling you the same truth from different angles. Energy gets dissipated when charges move through resistance. Voltage is the setup. Current is the motion. Resistance is the friction. Power is the heat, the light, the work, the thing you can actually use. Let's test this with a real example, because abstractions get slippery without anchors. Take an old incandescent light bulb, a 60-watt bulb plugged into a standard 120-volt American outlet. 60 watts, that's the power. That's what it consumes. Now ask yourself, what current flows through it? Power divided by voltage. 60 divided by 120, half an amp, a modest little stream of electrons. And what's the resistance of the filament? Voltage divided by current. 120 divided by 0.5, 240 ohms. Now here's the trick. If you took that same bulb and plugged it into a 240-volt European outlet, what happens? The voltage doubles. The resistance, more or less, stays the same, so the current doubles. And the power, which is voltage times current, quadruples. 240 watts of power dumped into a filament designed for 60. The filament flashes white, then black. The bulb dies in less than a second. Doubling the voltage didn't just double the destruction, it quadrupled it. Because power scales with voltage squared when resistance is fixed. This is why electricians treat voltage with such respect, even when the currents involved seem small. Voltage is the multiplier. Voltage is the lever. But voltage by itself, sitting in a wire that connects to nothing, is just a possibility, not a force. Now let's push this even further, because Feynman never let an idea sit comfortably. He always asked, but what is voltage really? At the deepest level, voltage is a difference in electric potential energy per unit of charge. It's how much energy each individual electron would gain or lose if it moved from one point to another. Notice the phrase, per unit of charge. Voltage is energy normalized by charge. It tells you the slope of the energy landscape, but not how many things are sliding down it. To get the total energy actually being transferred per second, you have to multiply by the rate at which charges are flowing, which is current. And there it is again. Voltage times current equals power. This is why the sun, glorious, blazing, the most powerful object you'll ever see in your sky, has no voltage at all in any meaningful sense. The sun delivers energy through photons, through radiation, through pressure and motion. There's no voltage in sunlight. And yet sunlight delivers about a kilowatt of power per square meter to the Earth's surface. Power without voltage, because voltage is just one of many ways to organize energy transfer. It's the way we use in circuits, in wires, in the electrical world humans have built for themselves. But the universe at large has many more ways of moving energy than that. And this brings us to one of the strangest, most counterintuitive truths in modern physics. The energy in an electrical circuit doesn't actually travel through the wires. Read that again. Feynman pointed this out in his famous lectures, and it tends to break people's brains. The electrons themselves drift through copper at speeds slower than a snail, sometimes less than a millimeter per second. So how does electricity power your kettle the instant you flip the switch? The answer is that the energy travels in the electromagnetic field surrounding the wires, not in the wires themselves. The wires are just guides, like the banks of a river. The actual energy, the actual power, flows through the space between and around them at nearly the speed of light, as a self-sustaining dance of electric and magnetic fields. This is described mathematically by something called the Poynting vector, named after John Henry Poynting, who figured this out in 1884. The Poynting vector tells you the direction and magnitude of energy flow in an electromagnetic field. And when you calculate it for a simple circuit, you find that the energy is pouring in from the sides, from the air around the wire, into the resistor or the lamp or the motor. The wire isn't carrying the energy. The wire is shaping the field that carries the energy. It is, frankly, one of the most beautifully strange ideas in all of physics, and almost no one outside of physics learns about it, which means that even our reservoir analogy, useful as it is, eventually breaks down, because the height of the water and the flow of the water are intuitive, mechanical things. But voltage and current are abstractions on top of fields, and the fields themselves are the deepest layer of reality we're probing. When you flip a light switch, you're not pushing electrons through a pipe. You're reconfiguring an electromagnetic landscape that fills the room, and the energy slides along that landscape into the bulb, where it gets converted into heat and light. The voltage tells you the shape of that landscape. The current tells you how fast it's being traversed. The power tells you how much actual energy is being delivered. And none of it would work if any one of those quantities were missing. So the next time you see a battery, or a transformer humming on a power pole, or a high-voltage warning sign nailed to a fence, remember this. Voltage is not power. Voltage is the readiness for power. Voltage is the height of the cliff, the slope of the hill, the eagerness of charges that have not yet moved. It is potential, in the most literal sense of the word. It is what could happen if only something would let it. And until current flows, until charges actually move through a path, that potential remains exactly that, a quiet, invisible tension in the wires, doing nothing, achieving nothing, threatening nothing. This is the kind of distinction Feynman built his entire teaching philosophy around. He believed that knowing the name of something was not the same as understanding it. You could call it voltage. You could call it electromotive force. You could call it electric potential difference. You could memorize the units, volts, joules per coulomb, kilograms times meters squared per ampere per second cubed. None of that would help you if you didn't feel, in your gut, that voltage was a slope, and current was a flow, and power was the thing you got when both existed at once. Feynman wanted you to see the river, not just read about it. And so we end where we began, with that reservoir perched above the valley. The water sits there, vast and silent, holding within it the possibility of immense power. But possibility is not actuality. The dam holds back the future. And only when the gates open, only when the water begins to fall and turn the turbines and rush into the world below, only then does that potential become real. Voltage is the dam. Current is the falling water. Power is the spinning turbine, the lit-up city, the warm meal, the moving train, the entire machinery of modern life. Confuse the dam for the turbine, and you misunderstand the whole system. Honor the difference, and suddenly the invisible world of electricity becomes a little less mysterious and a great deal more beautiful. That, in the end, is what Feynman was always trying to give us. Not answers, but eyes. Eyes to see what was already there, humming quietly in every wire, waiting patiently to be understood.